Our guest today is George Dunn, CEO of Create Independent Consultants. Create Independent Consultants is an innovative consultancy focused on helping organizations plan and implement strategies for digital transformation and information governance and digital process improvement. Indeed, George is an expert in digital process improvement and is back on the show with us today to discuss the need for digital transformation and process innovation in housing commissions and housing authorities. So, George, tell us a little bit more about housing commissions and housing authorities. So, why is there such a need for process innovation and digital transformation today in housing commissions and authorities?
You bet. Well, first of all, housing finance commissions are out there working with bonds. They're working with asset management compliance, home ownership, multifamily, um, and housing authorities doing admissions, asset management, you know, different kinds of property management. So they're two different kinds of organizations, but they interrelate with each other. And for both of those areas, we're finding a tremendous need for process improvement and digital transformation. Some of the reasons for both the finance commissions and housing authorities is that as budgets become smaller and older, knowledgeable staff retire, um, we've got to figure out a new way to work. Also, there are additional governance requirements for both of these areas. So the fact is that to meet those three challenges, we need to change the way work is performed because we just don't have the money to throw new technology at something or to hire more staff. The answer to that is let's look at those processes, make them more efficient, and then selectively implement technologies that provide a return on investment.
I know you are a process improvement expert and very focused on a process-oriented approach. So what are the key processes in housing commissions, housing authorities that are ripe for improvement and need to be examined in terms of our strategy for digital transformation?
You bet. So, for example, with housing finance commissions, the bond areas, and their relationship with finance are really important. There's a lot of communication back and forth. Outside legal counsel can be involved. And these are pretty complicated processes with long lives in terms of, storage of that information. So we're finding at the process level, there are many areas, which could be, asset management compliance as well, multifamily, as I mentioned earlier. For housing authorities, admissions, all the different types of programs they're running these days, including Section 8, asset management, property management, risk management, safety, and other areas.
Mhm.
So the first need for both of those types of organization is process. How do we work today? What isn't working correctly? What's causing rework? Are there better ways to interact with the client, or the applicant? By having, for example, a form that could be filled out and have digital workflow, take that in, identify if fields aren't filled out, send it back to them, say we need additional information, allow for routing of this information, but also allow for upload of supporting documents as part of that form and storing that information in one place. And so besides the process, a big challenge we see for both organizations is that they could have their documents stored in different data systems. They could have it stored in email, they have it on shared drives, they could have it in different ECM systems. And it's difficult to track what's going on within the organization. And also, Kevin, be in compliance with retention and disposition requirements at the state and at the federal level. So we see a combination of need for workflow and also for electronic content management for both of these organizations.
Well, that makes sense since information is everywhere. We hear about a single source of truth, but the reality is that organizations of all kinds really have multiple sources of truth or multiple sources of information that they need to manage. What are some techniques and technologies that you feel are most effective at addressing this?
You bet. The first thing we think that's important is to start with the process and to conduct a process inventory, looking at what are the different major processes by division and group. Doesn't take much time to do that. And then rank those processes based upon FTE allocation. What's the cost of the process today? And then how is the process working in terms of quality, efficiency, service, and governance? There's a meeting regulatory requirements. Again, doesn't take much time to do that, but by doing that, we're able to then sort through these areas, working with the organization and saying, okay, here's our top 10. This is where we need to spend the time. From that, creating high-level process maps. It's not hard to do that. It takes an hour, hour and a half uh, for those top processes, and work with the teams and say, okay, what do you think isn't working
Mm.
correctly? What are your ideas for change? It's a simple way to do it. What are the major building blocks of the process? What's the estimated number of detailed steps? And from that, then identify, does the process need to be, thoroughly redesigned point to point, or are there specific areas where it can drill down and make some changes? So the drill down would be looking at step by step how that process works, and also looking at the technology set today. Where, is there any workflow within the organization? How are the data systems functioning? Are they just repositories? Are there gaps in data systems today? Or are there systems that even exist for some of the groups? From that, also identify where are these documents stored. Some organizations are storing them in 5 or 6 different places, and it gets pretty confusing as to what is that single source of truth? Where is my final copy? So by combing through that and then, planning for technologies like electronic content management, consolidating, creating version control for that content, kicking off workflow patterns, also having retention disposition. So we control that in accordance with what is the state schedule, what are federal requirements. These are all important considerations. So starting with the inventory, identify your top areas, do your high-level maps for those top areas, and then decide where do you drill down, look at the process, and then look at your technologies. Can you use the technologies that are in place today better? Is there a way to reconfigure them? Or where possible, some of these new advanced technologies. And part of that is establishing what's the return on investment. And we can do that ahead of time by looking at the maps. So we think that that's a good approach for housing finance commissions and for housing authorities to help get them where they'd like to be.
We are here today speaking with George Dunn, CEO of Create Independent Consultants, a consultancy focused on helping organizations plan and implement strategies for digital transformation and digital process improvement. Now, George, you were talking about the need for a process map, a technology inventory, an assessment of regulatory constraints and requirements. This is all great. Is this something that housing commissions and authorities can do on their own?
Well, they certainly have the knowledge to do it in terms of their processes and how things work today. The challenge is, Kevin, they're busy. Everyone's busy supporting, the organization. Also, they don't really have a lot of experience with detailed process improvement methodologies and how to make this work. And also there's objectivity in terms of what's happening in different groups. If you have somebody assigned from finance and looking at multifamily, or someone finance and looking at different housing programs, it's hard for them to be objective because they're working together with people day to day. So we find that the best approach is to find a knowledgeable consultant, an external consultant that really understands process improvement, can move your organization quickly through this, provide leadership and a real excitement to this, work interactively with the group, and then help them through these milestones. The benefits of that is, first of all, the project gets completed, and also it's done correctly. So we find putting those two pieces together, the knowledge, the important knowledge of the staff, but then the direction of the consultant that brings the tools and the techniques of process improvement and advanced technology planning, make this work.
All right. So if I'm interested in moving forward, tell me more. How does Create help with all of this?
Sure. Well, our website is createinc.com, www.cre, the number 8, inc.com, or you can give us a call at 206-556-5958. We do answer our phone calls, and we're happy to chat with you or to chat with housing finance commissions or authorities on what are your goals, what would you like to accomplish, and to give you some ideas and to help you start scoping out a project like this. We find it's a great way to start, and we're happy to be of assistance.
George, before I let you go, one last question. How does this play out in the real world? Can you give us an example of one organization, one use case that you feel has been particularly
Sure.
successful? What did they do and what were the results?
Sure. Well, we've got a lot of clients out there, so let me focus on the process. The first is on the different housing programs. We've done detailed assessment of those programs, what's working, what's not working, and we find actually a lot of them aren't documented all that well in terms of how they're working, or different people do things a little bit differently. So we're trying to look at consistency. So looking at those programs, How can we be more efficient? Some programs, like Section 8, they open up every 5 years or 6 years. And they have a whole flood of applications and a whole flood of things that need to be processed. And that's doesn't mean they're used to doing this. With finance commissions of bonds, as I mentioned earlier, the interrelationship with finance and outside counsel are key areas. There's a lot of important process communication, a lot of twists and turns in those processes. And so that's one area that could be focused on that can make a lot of sense. But as I mentioned, each organization is going to be different in terms of their staffing and their needs. And so by doing that inventory and the high level mapping, we're able to identify what is the right direction for them, where would they like to go and help them accomplish that.
That is George Dunn. Find him at Create Independent Consultants. George, thank you so much for being our guest today on the Digital Transformation Podcast.
You bet, Kevin. Thanks so much for inviting me.